Hello, this is Arnel Tanyag of Tanyag Company. I'm doing my work week for June 23 to June 27, 2025. Just wanted to talk about a couple of different things that I learned this week that was really interesting in my role as a business advisor, business consultant, business coach, all three wrapped in one, sometimes trainer, sometimes speaker. It's a fun life being a business help or business support to business owners or independent contractors or just trainers at all. Just training people and helping them grow and all that. So this week, what I'm going to talk about is financial management. So let me tell you about this financial management stuff. I see a lot of companies that quickly fail or slowly, if they're not careful, they'll be dying by the wayside. And it's usually because they don't have strong financial management. And that's usually around budgeting, financial statements, monthly closeouts, knowing their profit, net profit, gross profit, their cash position, what's profitable in terms of service or product. I mean, I find out, and I wasn't really, when I think about this, I wasn't really, good about understanding this, and at least since the last couple of years. I find out when financial management helps you determine if the things that you're doing in the business is profitable or not. Are they in line to make profit? And I find a lot of the companies, if their financial management isn't very strong, an ideal segment of their business that they're paying attention to, what's going to happen is they're going to struggle. They're going to have a hard time making business decisions around their cash position. And then what happens is I find companies who they have tremendous amount of debt. They're not paying down their line. They're not having 6 months of operating capital. They're just behind. And when you have that type of financial pressure, it's hard to get through that. So a lot of times the most successful companies I work with really pay attention to that. They have monthly closeout, look at the P&L. They have a meeting with their CPA, their controller, outsourced controller, CFO, or their financial advisor. They look at the numbers. They look at what's being spent. They're looking at the budget. What can we spend or not spend? The reason they do that is because they want to make sure that financial management can make and break a company. I see a lot of companies when I work with them, so, well, let's look at your numbers first so I have a good idea. And I'm not an expert. I bring experts in there and they can tell me, Arnel, they need to do this, they need to do that. Okay, you need to watch this. Okay, great. But then once I get the solid numbers and once we know it's profitable, then it's about really growing the business that way. The other thing that I've really realized that I find out, there's a psychology of being a business owner. If you look at the revenue, it's like 0 to 250, 250 to 500, 500 to 750, 750 to $1 million, and then there's like $1 million to 5 million, and then 5 million to 10 million. There's a psychology of it being a business owner. And it's interesting, when most people work in the space of helping business owners, they don't know that there's a psychology of how they think, what's in their mind, what's really going on. In the 25 years that I've been working on, you'd be surprised how often that I see this, especially in the business owners that between 1 million to 5 million. Most of those business owners, and they're gonna be upset with me, they're not gonna like this. They're usually just bosses who move people and processes around. I could tell you constant stories of people I've worked with that's in that million to, 3 to 5 million. Really, they're just bosses that move people around. They wear about 7 to 9 hats. That's basically roles in their company. They could be the salesperson, the operations person, the production person, the business owner. They can be the W-2 employee. I mean, they're just the janitor. They just do everything to get done. And then they just move people and processes to get to the finish line. But the biggest challenge they don't have workflows. They don't have role profiles. They don't have KPIs. They don't have things specifically measured for what needs to be done in that role. So when somebody wants to follow them, the success of following them and really learn their workflow, know what the role is, what's being measured, how to tie it into the priorities, how to tie it into their business goals for that year, especially around the role, they can't, because most business owners, their mindset, I just got to get it done. I just got to get it done. And when they do that, say, for example, there's 5 steps in a process. Well, if there's 5 steps in a process, what typically happens is they get that 5 steps and they're not even they have 5 steps in the process, but then they're only going from 1 to 2, or they're going from 1 to 5 because they just know how to manipulate their process and get stuff done. So that's the biggest challenge is that some business owners are so dang good at getting it done, but then somebody else can't follow them. And then people ask me, why is that? Like, because a lot of times owners, depending on their belief, depending on their personality, depending on what they really think about people, or, because people in your business is going to help you grow and eventually scale if you want to scale. But a lot of times people who are business owners can't get their state of mind or mindset in a position to really understand that if they really want to grow, they have to develop people. So, and they can start off, when I have a client who we wrote a business plan this year. And last year I helped her hire an interior designer, hired someone who's been in the business for 3 years, and she's phenomenal. We had her take a bunch of assessment tests. We had her write out 30, 60, 90 plan, and she's just doing phenomenal. So that's able to take away probably about 45 to 50% of the pressure on the owner who used to do that. This year, she hired a business development person to go out there and every single day look at the niches she's going after, looking at people, calling them up, following up, really working that sales funnel, really getting referrals, introductions. And she told me, Arnel, she's doing phenomenal. I said, well, that's great. You hired a great person. And she goes, I know what you told me is I know what to measure in each of the roles. So I know if they're winning or losing. And so it was interesting. Like, we had a workshop through CVBIA, Coastal Virginia Building Industry Association, that we had a local gentleman named Cade who talked about how most companies fail in marketing. And she was the only business owner in the room. And she said, he asked her, why are you here? Oh, I have a team. I have somebody who does my design work. I have somebody who does business development work. I have somebody who does my production management work. I have somebody who manages my office. I can go to these things and use this as thinking time and work on my business. He says, wow, how'd you do it? Well, I was working with Arnel. I was saying, look, if you really want to get to the part to grow, you got to start looking at your role and start assigning people who are talented or who's got natural talent. You can develop them to do that role really well. And she's starting to do that. So she can now go to most important things for her business that has 20%, 20% of her time. She can focus on that top 20%, which has 80% impact, because she's starting to build a team. She's starting to really build something that she's in the middle, and she has a team of people. And that's powerful, because if you're a business owner and you can actually have a team, right? Does it have to be a leadership? No, it could be a management team right now, or it could be somebody who's responsible for that specific role, like interior designer, business development, production, right? So they're responsible for that. They can build a team, and eventually if they grow into running that department or running that unit, then they can move to a leadership team. And it's saved her a lot of time. She seems to be pretty rested when we talk, but that is what I call the psychology of working with business owners. Is each revenue, like I mentioned, 250, 500, 750, million, million to 5 to 10, depending on their org chart, depending on their niche, the industry, and it depends on the psychology. And then also depends on the belief, what they want to do, what do we believe. So the next thing I'm going to talk about was really interesting is stress for business owners. In my experience working with business owners for 25 years, most of the stress happens between two types of circumstances. Every day from 1 to 6, that's usually where the most stress happens. Or unless you got a long day and it's stressful in the morning and it's stressful the whole day. And that's the only two exceptions I see. So a lot of times after COVID, a lot of the owners that I'm talking to are having a hard time managing stress. There's so many things, and really stress is really managing your energy, your mind, your state of mind, your physical health, and how your time structure is, how you set up your time, and then, how do you prioritize. But what I see most of the time, stress with a lot of the business owners I talk to are usually between 1 to 6. So people ask me, how do you minimize the stress? Well, number one is time block free space. You got to get used to time blocking 30 minutes, an hour of free space. And the reason you want to time block it, because that's your choice. A lot of times people who feel they're so busy and they're so stressed out, they never get to have time. They never choose time for themselves. So a lot of times what we look at is like, what's your schedule? Do you have a time block, 15 minutes, 30 minutes in between appointments, right? And it's really your choice, not driving the car. Like, what could you do that's on you? The other thing that you can do to minimize stress is schedule 10 to 15 minutes between appointments. A lot of times people say you block it back to back, back to back. Well, that's okay if you got a great state of mind, you're physically healthy, and you know what you're getting into. But after a while, if those meetings are really intense, the difficult part of that, man, if it is intense, you're carrying over that stuff in your head. So it's good to block out 10 to 15 minutes before appointments so that you can actually, relax, get, calm down, get settled. And that helps. The other thing that I realize that I have several of my clients on who I advise, coach, or consult, especially if they're having multiple things going on, they're married, have kids, their business growing. I recommend them using the PQ program from Positive Intelligence. Again, PQ program from Positive Intelligence. And what they do is, they are learning how to manage that stress between 1 to 5. So I have a CEO of a company, and he's been doing PQ for about a year and a half. He does his PQ in the morning. He does about two reps of 12 and the daily focus, and sometimes the power breaks, right? But then after lunch, if it's a busy lunch or everything's coming at him, he says, Arnel, I sabotage myself. I get overwhelmed and all of that. So I said, okay, look, here's what we need to do. I said, and he was like, well, what do you think I need to do? I said, well, first of all, you need to do a PQ rep gym session, 5 minutes, 12 minutes, right after lunch, right? So you can set yourself to be calm and relax. And then number two, what you really want to do is while you're doing your power breaks in the afternoon, you may want to do some PQ reps between meetings, right? So that you literally can calm, it could be 2 minutes, 5 minutes, so that you go in there calm. And then what's most important to him, before you go home, you give yourself 30 minutes before you get out of the car so you can do a PQ rep, 5 minutes, 12 minutes, and ask your question, hey, how did the day go for me? Well, it was really well. And the key to that is because you're giving yourself space to relax your mind. So you're asking me, what's PQ? PQ is the core component of Positive Intelligence. What you do is you focus on a sensory experience like breathing, movement, touching your fingers, the sound of your breath, uh, rubbing your stomach, right? And then what it does, it allows you to focus on that physical sensation. You're practicing mental focus control, and there's nothing negative. Actually, you become more calm. And what it does, it builds a lot of the right brain, which is the creative brain, and it just slows you down. I've been, I took Positive Intelligence, still involved with them. I think it's probably about 3 years, right? And I took the mastery program, and I use this in my practice. And literally, my business has grown. I know what sabotages me, So I have certain clients I coach to because they have big goals, they have big struggles, and are trying to manage between a father, husband, CEO, director of operations, how to transition a company from 8 million to 20 million, how to navigate that, what's important to me, what's important to my business. But stress doesn't help but you can manage the stress. Stress is induced by you. And so one of the things that we have people do is really work on implementing PQ, not only in the morning, but during that stress time from 1 to 6, right? And especially before you go home is giving your space to do some PQ reps, get relaxed, get in the zone, and learn how to be calm. So when you go home, see your spouse, your kids, you're fully engaged to be engaged with them. You don't want to take the stuff you get from home. You want to disengage. So the PQ reps and the PQ app and all that Positive Intelligence done allows you to learn how to have a calm state of mind. Because here's what I've learned. If you cannot have a calm state of mind, you can't implement any new challenges. For example, you can't learn new leadership strategies if you're not calm. You can't even sustain the existing strategies and understand what are the reasons it's important to you to stick to it, right? And then you will just keep compounding the negativity in that survival mode, and you'll keep messing up how you see things, how you see people, how you see circumstances, and you'll literally sabotage yourself, and you will lose opportunity. I just know that in the years I've been using PQ, opportunities have come to me 100x. I don't always understand it. And I do two things. I thank God for them, because if it wasn't for God, and Jesus Christ, I don't think I get those opportunities. But number two, I don't think I get the opportunities if I didn't have a good state of mind and I was positive, and I could take all the things I've learned and implement it in circumstances that help me serve the best people, be the best version of me, but also see it happen in my way. The other thing that I want to talk about that's dear to my heart is I see a lot of business owners, they're looking for support or help, right? They're trying to, like, who can I help me in my business? Who can I not? Because eventually, you can't just do your business by yourself, right? So, they're asking me, well, how do I choose? So, well, first of all, you got to look at what kind of help you need. So I'm gonna go over a couple roles out there in the business community that you can look at. Number one, a business coach. So a business coach, what they do is they focus on improving your performance, personal, developing your skills, structured process guidance. There's a lot of business coaches out there. The unique thing about it is you really need to look at somebody who's actually been certified in a specific process that has been successful, right? And then why people hire business coaches is because it improves their skill. It helps them develop the professional personal development. The coach's belief is, we don't give you the answer, we help you discover your answer. So I believe that wholeheartedly, but in some cases, I just tell people, look, I don't think, after I help them discover, let me just give you my experience, what you do or do not do. And so, because what we want, like when I work with people on the coaching side, I do multiple things. The coaching side, I want them to know what we're doing and understand it, because it becomes a skill, comes from experience, comes from knowledge, it comes from understanding the reason you're doing it. So, and there are, and one of the biggest concerns I tell people, there's a difference between a life coach and a business coach. A life coach, from my experience, talks about life, a little about the business. A business coach, if I'm under MAPS Business Coaching, which they focus on coaching the individual, not the problem. So we look at two things: looking at what's important for their lives, looking at important in business, and we keep that in sync. And they have very unique processes. It's based on the productivity system from Gary Keller, the one thing. So that is my my system I bought in and I'm being part of, that works. I mean, it's a one-page plan, 411. I mean, that's where I drive most of my clients, if they're willing to participate, to get into that system, right? The other thing that I think that people don't, the other person they look at is more what is a business consultant. So a business consultant is somebody who has expertise on a specific problem or project. So for example, like I can help people hire people off Indeed in a way that finds talent and structure it. So I've been doing that for the last 3 or 4 years. I've done it for existing clients in the past, and now I'm offering a service just to work with people on that. So as a consultant, there's a specific problem you solve, and current situation diagnosis. You have a specific process. It's usually short-term projects, and that's what I do. I do that. That's something that I have fine-tuned over the last 3 or 4 years and gotten really good at it. The other thing I'm really good at is that people don't know about this. I'm really good at business development and building your business off relationships or referrals. I mean, I've spent hours, time, and money. One of the best trainers in the world is Michael J. Mayer, who wrote the book 7 Levels of Communication. And I became one of the certified referral trainers. He has the best system, in my opinion, for developing referrals in any industry. It's just written as a real estate agent. So you have to be able to look at his content and understand how to tailor it. I spent many years, the last 7 years, going to conferences, getting training, and tailor it to me. And it actually works really well. If I stick to his process, I get great referrals. So, because sometimes the best training programs for referrals are real estate agents. I mean, that industry is phenomenal in referrals. You just have to be able to take that information and tie it into your business. Now, I have, because I spent time and money and getting certified and going through that training. And I do attend some of the trainings throughout the year because it works. So that's what a consultant does. It really focuses on a project. A business advisor, that's somebody who focuses on strategic guidance and support to make businesses form long-term challenges. So it looks at a business advisor looks at the business, sees the whole, look at, the goals, strategic initiatives, priorities, sets goals, recommends long-term strategies for growth. So do I do some of that? A little bit. I know a gentleman right now locally here. He's a fractional CEO. I mean, I met him, great guy. I mean, he is phenomenal scheduler. I know one of my clients works with a fractional CEO. I mean, I've never been a CEO. I can't talk about that. Yeah, I mean that's a C-suite role. I don't know. I don't talk about that, but I do talk about the element. This fractional CEO said that you help your owners when they transition from business owner C-suite, how to manage all the expectations, all the stress, all the ways to prioritize, get things moving, and communicate. You're able to help them navigate that a lot quicker and faster. The one gentleman I work with here, he said, Arnel, I don't do that. I write the plan. I work with them as student initiatives. They ask me questions, but for them to focus on becoming that better version, it seems like that's something you do. Yeah, I do that. Yeah, and there are people really good. They're really good people as business advisors. I recommend people when you're getting to a point when you want to scale, say you're doing 5 or 6 million, you want to do 20, 25. Yeah, you want a business advisor. You want probably somebody who's a fractional CEO. They're very good. A business mentor, that's where I tell people that's somebody who's already been there. They provide guidance and support on personal experience and wisdom to help you develop person. The key to with business mentors, you want to look at something and look at their personal life, their business life. Is that somebody you want to mimic? Is that somebody you want to learn from? Is that somebody that can teach you something? Now, the unique thing about business mentors, it's more like informal. It's like coaching, consulting. They have their own process. It's not as, unless they've been a coach before, it's not as specific. But here's the thing: what you have to do, you have to be able to have a series of questions to ask them. If you give them questions when you're talking to your business mentor, he or she will give you answers. But you have to be prepared for questions, because that's what I find out when I'm talking to people who have business mentors. They have certain questions that they want to be answered, or there's a goal and there's a series of questions they ask their business mentor that helps them guide them through the process. And usually business mentors, like what they'll do, if you work for a corporation, there's like a CFO, CEO, and you want to move up there. I always recommend, if you want to move up in the company, find somebody who's there and ask them to be your mentor. I tell you what, if you do that, you're going to move a lot faster, because they take a personal stake in your growth and success. And number two, they're going to give you the inside track on what to do, what to not to do, what kind of skills you have. It's pretty powerful. You can even do that in business. Like, that's one of the things I'm going to be looking for this next 6 months to next year, is find a business mentor in the space I want to be in, and see if I can find somebody who has the ideal lifestyle and the ideal business acumen that I really want. Now, people ask me, well, how do I choose one or the other? Well, first of all, figure out what problem you're trying to solve, right? What's the problem you're trying to solve? What's the next thing coming online that you want to solve? Well, then if it is it, do you need a business coach? Do you need a business advisor? Do you need, a business consultant? Do you need a business mentor, right? What are the problems you solve? And when you figure out that problem, the next thing you got to really think about is, okay, what did that person, how did that person have a process? Did they receive that knowledge and training by them through their own experience, or did they buy into a process? Like I went through business maps and coaching and training because I always wanted to be under the Keller Williams system. They have the best, their Keller Williams is a training and coaching company that does real estate. I mean, they have I think the best process to scale and grow, because it developed the person while developing the business. So the other thing, I bought into positive intelligence. I mean, I didn't just buy into the coaching program. I spent lots of money in their 6-month mastery program to learn positive intelligence at a high level, so I can understand and really work with my clients. And I didn't just, get certified. I actually spent the money to understand the process and all that. So I went to that positive intelligence, called it's master certification. I learned that, right? Exit Planning Institute. I actually bought into the Exit Planning Institute yet, because I have clients that want to decide how to exit. So I need to know what to know, but doesn't mean I always have to implement it. I could always bring in somebody else to work with me, but I wanted to know. I've learned over the last 6-7 years, get the specific training, get the specific process. That's how you know if the person you're working with does have that training. You'd be surprised that people don't. Then the other question is what not only the certifications, what professional development did they keep and keep, or they are still part of. How do they keep that information going, right? So you really, and then the other thing you got to ask them. Some of them, they can go through the program and this, but do they understand the art and science of business owner? I mean, my background was, I used to be, well, I still am. I'm just not a practicing. I have an RN, registered nurse for Bachelor of Science Nursing. So, I mean, I know that when, they used to tell us in nursing, you got to meet the clients where they're at. If the doctor wants you to give them these pills, but the person's like, they're in pain, they want Tylenol, you got to say, hey, excuse me, Mr. So-and-so physician, let's get this Tylenol. He'll probably open this. You have to meet where people are at, and you have to understand people. So I've learned that, do they understand the art and science of people? Sometimes the people could be the most technical experts, but they're a jerk to work with. Just got to know that up front. But that's okay. People say, is that okay? Yeah, it's always okay to do that. So that's what you have to decide, because at the end of the day, if you're not, then you're leading yourself in a terrible situation. So if you're going to need business help, business support, just look at the challenge, look at the goal you want to accomplish, look at the challenges, and figure out, is it a coach? Is it a consultant? Is it a business advisor? Is it a mentor? All four of them will cost you money, either in time or money out of your pocket. But I believe that you can't do it on your own. I believe you have to find people to surround yourself that can help you get there faster and quicker. You just have to determine, what's the problem, what's the solution I need. Is it short-term, long-term? Who can help me? And I always tell people, look, I'm not the answer to every question. I'm not the answer to every solution, but I'm a great listener and a good sounding board. Once we figure out the challenge or problem, we can always figure out the solution. Sometimes I have to fire myself and say, I ain't the right guy for that thing. Okay, you have a very limited budget. Let's find somebody else. And that's okay, because at the end of the day, I want people to be successful. I want people to achieve their goal. If I'm not the right guy, I need to fire myself. Would I be hurt? Probably. But at the end of the day, they're getting where I want to. And I know what I'm good at, and I know what I'm not. And I'm okay with that. So again, this is Arnel Tanyag, Tanning Company. This is my work week. I hope this information was very helpful. And again, thanks for watching. I look forward to see you next week. Thank you.